Hello, hello, and welcome to Undivided on this Monday. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. This is what this show is all about. I mean, I could sit here and blah, 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 my opinion on things, and it's fine. I mean, it's fine. It's what I do for a living. I hope you find value in it. But if you don't take that information and do something with it, and if it doesn't make a difference, then really, what are we doing? And I will tell you, over the weekend, I was just like, God, I love you guys. I love you so much. We've been doing a couple exclusive stories on just nonsense happening in local school districts. And it just warms my heart to see parents take that information and use it to fight back, use it to inform themselves, use it to demand better of our schools and better for their children. So we have several examples of this, but I have to start in Arlington because this is going to be going down tonight. So as we broke the news of last week based on some internal emails that we'd received from a very concerned parent, the Arlington Public School District, Arlington High School specifically, when school begins next week, is going to be allowing back in school a kid who was suspended because he brought a loaded Beretta pistol, 2 fully loaded magazines, and some loose ammo to school in February of 2024 in his backpack. And apparently they think that he has been rehabilitated. And so now the Arlington School District is going to allow him to return. But as we reported last week, there were only a few parents who knew about this. So we got one of those parents sent me an email that she got from the superintendent that basically said, hey, here's our plan with this particular student. We're going to, assign him a one-on-one staff member to monitor him during the school day. We're prohibiting the student from carrying a backpack on campus. We're conducting searches of the student for weapons. And the reason why this particular parent was being notified about this potential school shooter returning to the classroom is because her child is one of the ones who told the school that he had a gun. So the school would have never known about this back in 2024 had this student who brought the loaded gun and several loaded magazines not told a couple people that he had a gun with him. And they, thank God, went to the principal's office and said, oh my God, so-and-so says they have a gun. They did a search of the backpack and found it. So the school had at least notified, and the superintendent had at least notified the parents of the kids who maybe would have the most to fear if this young man came back to class. But I'll tell you, after we reported on the fact that this kid was going to be allowed back, I was shocked to find out that parents at large hadn't been notified about it. So I'm on Facebook and we, report on this story, and there, parent after parent after parent is saying, my daughter goes to Arlington High School. I wasn't notified. Parent of AHS student, first time hearing about this. AHS parent of 2, I was unaware about this. I'm a parent of an Arlington High School student. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. So there's parents all over my Facebook page freaking out. And gosh, I wish I could say I was surprised. I guess there was a little part of me that thought surely the school sent out something at least vague to parents before school begins, that this teenager who brought a loaded weapon and extra magazines to class and was prosecuted for it, got charged with a felony, surely the school said something, and it wasn't just these emails sent to a few parents. But no, most Arlington High School parents, the first they heard that a potential school shooter was returning to class next week was from us, which is completely unacceptable. And had the one parent not notified us because they were frustrated, they were trying to get the school to reconsider and had been trying for several weeks to no avail. And so they brought the story to us and even notified the school. They even told the school, I'm sending this to Brandi Kruse. And even then, the school didn't think, well, maybe before Brandi reports on it, we ought to get this information out to families at large. But they, for some crazy reason, decided that wasn't information that parents should be privy to. So we did this story on Thursday's show. And then what do you know? Friday morning, the school sends out to all Arlington High School parents an email and an automatic voice message finally letting them know what's happening.
Dear Arlington families and staff, this is Gary Sable, Director of Communications with Arlington Public Schools. The district is aware of recent media reports regarding a high school student who has completed an expulsion and will be returning to school this fall. We recognize that this news may cause concern for some families, and we want to assure you that the safety and well-being of all students remains our highest priority. While federal law, FERPA, prevents the district from sharing details about individual students, we can share that in situations like these, we take thoughtful, proactive steps to support both safety and student success. These steps may include a formal threat assessment that may result in a safety plan. Safety plans may include, but are not limited to, assigning a dedicated one-to-one staff member to monitor the student during the school day, no cell phone, prohibiting the student from carrying a backpack on campus, conducting searches of the student for weapons, and no presence on school grounds or at school events outside of the school day. Our response in this matter has been guided by Washington state law. It is important to know that some actions suggested in recent media coverage are not legally permissible for school districts to take. We remain committed to acting responsibly and lawfully. We value our partnership with families and the trust you place in us. If you have questions or would like to talk about your child's safety, please do not hesitate to contact us. We welcome the opportunity to work with you to ensure every student has a safe, supportive, and successful school year. Thank you.
Why did it take us reporting on this for them to send that out to parents? Clearly, law doesn't prohibit them from sending out a notification like that, or they wouldn't have been able to do it on Friday. Why would it take us reporting on a kid, not even a kid, it's a teenager, knows the difference between right and wrong, been a problem student. Why would it take us reporting on their decision to allow him back to the same school where he brought a loaded gun and extra magazines in a state that we're supposed to believe, needs to restrict our Second Amendment rights because they take school shootings so seriously? Why does it take us for you to send that out? So one other thing about this, and this is what really pisses me off, and we'll get to the update on what's happening with this tonight. Can you play just that little clip there at the end?
Our response in this matter has been guided by Washington state law. It is important to know that some actions suggested in recent media coverage are not legally permissible for school districts to take.
Some actions recently suggested in local media coverage. We were the only ones who'd covered it at the time. Thankfully, King 5 News and some other outlets picked it up over the weekend, which I'm glad they did. So some suggestions made in local media. So some things that Brandi Kruse is saying we should do, basically, we can't do by law. So I heard that, and I got to say it pissed me off for a couple reasons. The only reason that you're telling parents about this is because we told them about it. So you didn't tell them anything. And then you're going to try to kind of turn it on me and, well, we might not have told you anything, but Brandi's suggesting things that we can't even do. Okay, well, maybe you should have been more transparent with parents to begin with and laid out for parents proactively what you could do and could not do under Washington state law or under FERPA, and kept parents fully informed. Now, after that voicemail went out, I had a conversation, email exchange, with the man in that clip who's their communications director. And, it was a little finger wagging at him, but I basically emailed him and I said, look, I'm not trying to drive a wedge between parents and Arlington High School. This isn't the Seattle Public School District. I am sure that there's a lot of staffers and teachers at Arlington High who probably agree with us politically on a lot of things. I'm not trying to drive a wedge. What I am trying to do is what we're always trying to do. Make sure the government and government entities are accountable to the people who they're supposed to serve and who pay their salaries. And that's the case here. We want to make sure parents, especially when it comes to the safety of their kids, have all the information that they should have. And shouldn't that be what a school wants to? And so I told him, look, in these situations, I've been in the news for 15 years. I've covered a lot of stories like this related to schools. And sometimes it's the fact that you kept them in the dark that people are more upset about than whatever's at the center of the story. And I think that's part of it here. Yes, parents don't want this kid coming back to school. But now, because you hid it from them, they're pissed about both things. They're pissed that you hid it from them, and yes, they're pissed about this kid coming back to school. And so what I said in the email is, look, if I'm making some sort of suggestions about what the school could do in a situation like this that aren't true, please let me know, because I want parents to be equipped with accurate information. But also, why don't you let them know? In that voicemail, it's so vague, it leaves parents with even more questions than answers. Oh, Brandi's suggesting some things we can't even do. Okay, then tell them what you can do. Tell them what your options are and are not. Not some vague, our hands are tied, state law, which isn't even true. And so he responded and basically said, well, we can't force the student to go to a different district, which I'm not sure I said force him to go to a different district. I said the kid could go to a different district, and that family could make that decision. And then they're seeming to suggest that they basically don't have any wiggle room because they're guided by state law in bringing this kid back, which isn't the case. State law on this is very clear. If a student brings a loaded gun to school, there is essentially an automatic assumption that they're going to be suspended for a year. What is the other word? Not suspension,
expelled.
Expulsion, but suspension is temporary, right? Suspended for a year. And state law makes it very clear that individual school superintendents have broad authority when it comes to amending suspensions or expulsions. It leaves it very broad. In state law, superintendents on a case-by-case basis can change this. And for some reason, this superintendent has decided not to. And I pointed that out, I have not received a response to that end. But if the superintendent wanted to change this, they could. The other thing they said is they can't simply keep this student out of class and give them an alternate education, like online or something. That was a suggestion I made. Like, you taught kids online during the pandemic. You can't do that for a kid who brought a loaded gun to school? And the truth is, regardless of what they might say, state law allows for it. If you have a student that is on an active suspension, nothing prohibits the school from providing them with an education in some sort of alternative setting. So here's what you can do. And I'm sure the school, if I'm wrong on this, tell me, but I'm not wrong on this, so you're not going to tell me that. The superintendent today, whose name is Kruse, it's a she, Kruse could today amend that suspension and extend it. And if you extend the suspension, state law allows you to teach them in an alternative setting. Done. Why won't you do it? I've said, and it's probably unpopular, I think it has to do with race. I'm just being frank. I think if this was a white kid who brought in a gun that was loaded, they would have been like, oh my God, we just prevented the next school shooting and this kid is never going to be allowed back in our classrooms. It's interesting, online and all the chatter about this, even the principal of the high school has been in the comments, and it seems like the principal of the high school doesn't even want this kid back. That's my take on her comments, that the principal of the high school doesn't even want this kid back and wants people to email their legislators about all of this and what went down. So the principal of the school doesn't even want the kid back. The kid would have to have a one-on-one escort during the day, get searched for weapons, could come to no extracurricular activities whatsoever, can't even carry around a backpack at school. And parents are supposed to believe that that kid isn't a threat to the safety of their children. It's insane. So here's what's happening tonight. Arlington's school board is probably has never seen and never will see a meeting that's going to be as well attended as the meeting tonight. All over the pages for Arlington High School on Facebook, I know parents are gearing up to go to their regularly scheduled school board meeting tonight to voice their concerns about all of this. I hope they can do so, in a orderly and respectable way. But the bottom line is you deserve to know what's happening with your kids. And the fact that a high school, even if they're going to point to state lawmakers or whatever it is claiming that they couldn't tell you all about this is absolute nonsense because they told you about it on Friday. So if they were really prohibited by state law from telling you, then nothing would have changed on Friday. But they were able to tell you. So I don't think we're going to the meeting tonight, but I know that some parents that are going to be attending. So we look forward to hearing what they have to say. And if it's anything like the school board meeting that happened in the Bonnie Lake Sumner School District, well, we're really in for a treat. And that's the second story I want to talk about with parents fighting back. So you will, of course, remember the weird drag show event that was held outside a Bonnie Lake Sumner Elementary School last month. We broke this news. A woman named Dawn Land had shown up because this was a publicized event. and taken pictures. And it was grown men parading around in lingerie in front of little children. That's what it was. And this was absolutely an event for kids. It was held in the parking lot. The local chapter of the Democratic Party was there. This local LGBTQ drag performance group was there. There were bouncy houses and craft tables. And there were children, if you looked at the crowd, aged from, still in strollers to like preteen. And as I said at the time, I don't care the context. I don't care the context. There is no reason grown men should ever in any scenario be parading around in their panties in front of children. Period. Nor should grown women be parading in lingerie around children on the campus of a public elementary school. Like, this is weird, weird stuff. And in both of these stories today, we're not talking about Seattle. That in Seattle, we'd still do a story on it, but he'd be like, here goes Seattle again. This is Bonnie Lake Sumner. That story was Arlington. So this is the tentacles of the radical ideology spreading. Parents don't deserve to know. We're going to push our radical ideology on kids, and it's just fine. So we do this story, and it got crazy. I mean, Libs of TikTok was doing this story. It was all over the place. So, of course, at the next following the story, school board meeting, it was very well attended. And there were a lot of parents who showed up to express their displeasure, which I'm going to get to in a moment, because, man, I listened to this in the car. I was driving up. We went camping this weekend, and I was like, oh, now's a good time to catch up on what happened at the Bonnie Lake Sumner school board meeting. And I was in my car just clapping. Some of these parents were so great. But then there's the unhinged stuff. So I want to play this first. The event that happened in this elementary school parking lot was put on in part by Hope Development Practice. So one of the first speakers at the school board meeting was a woman named, was a person named Abby White, who is with Hope Development Practice. And rather than come on and say, we hear parents' concerns, maybe the costumes were inappropriate for this age group and we're willing to talk to parents or work with parents or answer any questions. Nope, she blamed us for showing the photos to you.
I am actually Abby White, the executive director of Hope Development Practice. We specialize in working with the LGBTQ community. We're a behavioral health agency. First of all, I would love to give a little bit of education around the importance of drag for the LGBTQ community. Pride initially started out of discrimination that was happening. The first people to step up were drag performers and trans people in the community to rise up against the discrimination that was happening. And so the historical aspect of why we include that in a Pride event relates back to the historical impact.
Okay, stop it there for a second. We'll keep going in a moment. You're telling me, from a historical perspective, the only possible way that you can talk about the contributions of trans people and drag performers is to have a grown man in panties? Like, I've been to a lot of drag shows. Now, I'm opposed to drag shows for kids for just these reasons, is that it's like give an inch, take a mile, give a perverted little mouse a cookie. But I've been to a lot of drag shows. And even in adult settings, I've been to drag shows where the performers were wearing more clothing than that. So you can talk about the history and the importance of drag and trans performers and fighting back for equal rights. It doesn't mean that you have to parade a grown man in front of children in panties and have him do the splitsies in the air. Okay? Let's keep going.
I do want to acknowledge the inappropriate photos that were taken. Our legal team did go back and look into the pictures and what was displayed without consent. First of all, the photographer is someone who's well known to go to Pride events and take inappropriate pictures to try to slander the LGBTQ community. And the photos, we went back and talked to Riff Raff. Those were not consensual, nor were they from angles that were ever at the audience. Those were intentional photos to unfortunately cause rise up of hate, which unfortunately resulted in me getting death threats, my staff getting death threats, our Pride performers getting death threats.
What are you talking about? That is the craziest defense of an inappropriate drag show I've ever heard in my life. So she says the person who took the photos, Dawn Land, she does this just to intentionally stir up hate. It doesn't matter what her motivation is. She took pictures of what you were actually doing. And then this other insane, she says the pictures were taken from angles that were never visible to the audience. What are you talking about? Every picture that we've shown is taken from the perspective of the audience, including the grown man who's got his legs up in the air, exposing his butt crack. Now, there's a million things that I could obviously say that make that insane, like the fact this is in a public place. You decided to have this event around children. You clearly don't know the law. People can go there and take pictures. They don't have to have your consent in a public place. And if you got, death threats from what you decided to show up and do around children, it seems like it's unfortunate, but maybe you should reevaluate what you're doing around children. But I don't think anybody could say it better than right after she got done, this parent came on and in like one short sentence just summed up why her answer was asinine.
If it was not inappropriate behavior going on, then those photos wouldn't have had anything inappropriate to show.
Exactly. So that is the dumbest one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. The suggestion that we're the problem for showing the photos. You're not the problem for doing the things that were shown in the photos in front of children. Got it. Now, parents had some excellent takedowns of the school board for allowing this, in the school district for allowing this. But first, I kind of hate to give this guy any attention, but I was LMAOing about this guy's testimony, which is about me. I'm going to divide it into two parts here. So he gets up and he's very angry about the backlash over this whole thing. Here's the first part of his testimony.
I'm here tonight because your district has been caught in the crosshairs of an online outrage cycle, one that misrepresents what actually happened at Plateau Pride, and in doing so, has put community members in real danger. Here are the facts. Plateau Pride was organized by Hope Development Practice, a nonprofit behavioral health agency. The event was held on a weekend during a summer break in a district facility rented under the same community use policies that allow churches, sports leagues, and other groups to use school assets. It was a public pride celebration with music, vendors, drag performances, and yes, some parents chose to bring their children. The school district did not sponsor the event, did not dictate its content, and did not compel anyone to attend.
So he says he's clearing up like my lies about it. Did anything he say there sound inconsistent with what we said about the event? No, that's exactly what we said about the event. Held on school property, obviously in the summer, attendance wasn't mandatory. So he's suggesting that we released these images and we're telling lies about what was happening. No, that's literally exactly what happened. And that's what we said happened. And here's where he gets really mad at me. I'm what does he call me? A rage caster.
Despite this, an influential local commentator posted, quote,
"Oh, influential.
If you support this, you're sick.
True.
Men in lingerie parading around for children at an elementary school," end quote. Alongside this, she published close-up photos of individual performers without their consent. The result, performers and the event organizer have received threats, including death threats. This is not about whether you personally enjoy drag shows or pride events. It's about telling the truth. It's about not allowing half-truths, missing context, and loaded language to smear our schools or endanger members of our community. What happened online a few weeks ago wasn't, quote-unquote, holding the district accountable. It was using your district's name as a prop in a culture war narrative, one that ignores parental choice, community policy, and the basic fact that the district was a landlord, not a producer. That local ragecaster who put the photo on her Facebook page said, quote unquote, lots of people in the comments who need the FBI to sweep their PCs. This ragecaster wanted rage and she got it. Unfortunately, so did a lot of other folks, which resulted in death threats, and fear mongering. That's not cool.
Yeah, I don't want rage. I want people to be informed about what's really happening. If what's really happening drives them to rage, then that might be a good indication that what's happening isn't appropriate, as it wasn't in this case. I just love that, though, that he read my comment, because remember I had posted these images, and I was shocked at the number of people who were, and they all had like pronouns in the biotype, who were like, oh, this is fine. It's just a reenactment of Rocky Horror Picture Show, as if that makes any difference in the world. And I had made a comment about, wow, there's some people in the comments that really need the FBI to screen their PCs. And I thought it was funny. And I love that he read my funny comment back to the school board. But it's not about rage. It's about parents deserve to know what's happening with their kids. And it's about the fact that we pay for these public schools. And it's completely inappropriate to allow grown men to parade in their panties around kids. Now, there were a lot of parents at this meeting who understand that, and I was so proud of the ones who got up to speak. One of the ones I've got to play for you is this woman who gets up, and it sounds like she used to be a stripper, and she's sort of acknowledging that. And for that reason, kind of what she did in her past, she's very concerned about her daughter potentially being exposed to things like this at school.
As somebody with severe anxiety, for me to come up here, it means a lot to me to protect my daughter. I'm showing you those pictures today. As the person said, they were without their knowledge. They shouldn't have been taken. The fact is, those were taken. That was in front of children at my daughter's elementary school. Okay? I'm going to be completely honest here. A lot of people, I grew up in Enumclaw, Washington. A lot of people know about my past. I used to be what they call a midnight ballerina, a very toxic lifestyle. No different than this. Could you imagine a child going to an adult female strip club? How about I ask this? Because I got an email back saying you guys can't discriminate, and so that's why you guys rented it to them. Okay? How about I go rile up all my strip club girlfriends, have a nonprofit, and teach the young girls that you can be a strip club dancer? I have raised my daughter to not be like me, not go through the path that I've gone through. And I expect her to be in school and be protected.
Amen, sister. And she's right. It's not about trans, it's not about gay, straight. It's about appropriate for children or inappropriate for children. Period. And as she points out, we wouldn't parade a bunch of strippers in front of kids and have kids like they did at this event, hand them dollar bills, have the strippers throw their legs in the air and spread their legs in front of little children. It would never happen. But for some reason, because we're hateful and hateful and bigoted, if we say that you shouldn't allow that when it's a cross-dresser, when it's a transgender person, when it's a drag performer, it's unreal. And because this is all about this episode today, Parents Fight Back, I've got to play a few of the other parents who showed up at that meeting.
It's sickening that you guys allowed that there. You guys with your gay straight club at school, it just leaves sexuality out of it. I don't care if a kid's gay or straight or if anybody is. It's not anybody's business. Leave sexuality out of it. Teach them sex ed, but leave the sexuality out of it. That is just sickening. It's groomer stuff. It really is groomer stuff.
We don't need drag shows in a parking lot in our school with men rolling over and showing their behinds in sadomasochist clothing to children.
It's about a public elementary school being used to sexualize entertainment involving minors. And this was for minors. It was brought to bring in minors to try to push this stuff to them. How is this not grooming? How is this not sick? How can any of you stand for this? This is ridiculous.
Have a pride event, have it indoors for adults. There's no reason kids should be able to attend something like that. That is disgusting. And I'm going to go ahead and just end it there because I don't want to go to jail.
Oh, so Nicole, a big round of applause to Sumner Bonnie Lake School District parents for standing up for yourselves and your kids. Also a round of applause to Arlington High School parents who over the weekend were raising holy hell about being kept in the dark, about a clear safety risk to their kids. And I know many of them will be at the meeting there tonight, and that's what we want. that guy who accuses me of being a rage caster or whatever it is, it's because we're exposing inconvenient truths. We're exposing truths that people like you want to hide because you're trying to push an agenda on kids. You're trying to raise the future democratic socialists of America or whatever it is. And we're not going to stand for it anymore. Neither Nicole or I have kids, but we still know the importance of making sure that parents can dictate how their kids are raised with their values, and that parents can know if their children are being exposed to something that they don't agree with or that puts them in harm's way. This is common sense stuff. So I'm so proud of parents standing up for themselves and their rights, and standing up for their kids, and standing up for what's right and what's wrong. All right, we have a long segment. We don't talk about the public safety crisis happening in, yes, a lot of blue cities across our country, including Washington State, which was just ranked last in the country for public safety. We'll discuss. First, our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com is the guy you want to reach out to if you're thinking about selling your home. Wes and his team, their marketing is second to none. You're just not going to see better marketing out there. And it matters right now because we're in a period of time where there are a lot of listings on the market, certainly compared to 6 months ago, a year ago. And so you need to make sure that your listing stands out. Wes and his team can help with that. A great mixture of photos and immersive video to really show your property off. And they'll come in, do their listing boost concierge service to make sure that any cosmetic upgrades, small to big, that you need done to your home to make sure that it appeals to potential buyers in a crowded field. They'll help manage those for you, and they can even pay for them up front, so you don't have to foot the bill until closing, which takes a lot of the financial pressure off as well. So reach out to our friend Wes Jones, sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. It really just is a better way to sell your home. You remember it wasn't long ago, Governor Bob Ferguson was bragging about, we're on the right track when it comes to crime in the state of Washington. Well, it turns out we're not even a little bit, because the numbers tell a much different story. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that. Speaking of people getting involved, that's a good way to do that. So we had this is August 4th, Governor Bob Ferguson. We'd shown this on the show because at the time there had just been a double murder at a homeless encampment. There had been all these other crime issues happening in Seattle, like a homeless guy shot down at the waterfront. Governor Ferguson was sharing a story from King 5 News about crime rates drop in Washington for 2024. And he said, "This is encouraging news. I appreciate our law enforcement professionals working hard to keep our communities safe. We must keep up the momentum." But in truth, even if we have small little improvements here and there in Washington state in certain subsets of crime, the picture as a whole is still very startling. And at this, last few years, when you have a lot of states, saw an uptick in crime, red states and blue states during the pandemic, a lot of states are moving in a much more positive direction, while Washington state, in some of the worst categories of crime, continues to have a very significant problem. I saw this report out, and I don't typically love these studies because you can see one study that says something one day, another study that says something another day, but there's been a couple of these out that we've done where it's ranking Washington state pretty consistently toward the bottom of the list when it comes to places to live or places to move. So this Wallet Hub study, Best States to Live in, it has Washington state as 36th. So we're pretty low on the list. And we were pretty low on the list the other day when we did a best states to move to, or states where most people are moving to. But what I found really interesting, not surprising if you're actually paying attention, is one of the main contributors to why we were 36th on this list is we rank dead last for their analytics for public safety. 50 out of 50. Think about that. We're supposed to be like this world-class state, don't compare us to all these other crime-ridden areas. 50th in public safety. Washington state. Portland and Oregon not too far behind that. But again, not a surprise, because when you actually look into the data, whenever there's data around public safety, politicians will find and they'll pick out whatever is most politically advantageous. For instance, property crime numbers. In states like Washington, Oregon, California, they always want to say, property crime is down, because they've made it so impossible for people to actually report property crimes. I mean, we have fewer and fewer police officers, And so people were waiting hours on end to make a report about property damage or theft even. So they just stopped doing it. They just stopped doing it. And that's as clear as day for anyone who actually cares to ask questions. You know, for instance, there was a bunch of restaurants. We had that one, I can't remember what it was called, in the East Lake neighborhood of Seattle that had been broken into like 17, 18 times in a period of a couple of years. And they just stopped calling the cops. And they just, you know, they're not reporting it to their insurance because they would lose their insurance entirely. So they're just eating it. And so because we have so few officers, 911 response times are so bad, people stop reporting crimes and even some violent crimes. And then the numbers go down and people like Bob Ferguson are like, yay us. It's like, no, this is actually a very, very bad thing. But on August 14th, the yearly FBI stats came out and they aren't good for Washington State. They're very, very bad when it comes to the trajectory of our state in violent crime comparatively to other states. This is important because there are some areas where year over year we're seeing improvement. But you had the whole country basically during the pandemic that was seeing a spike in certain kinds of crime. And after the pandemic was done, you know, these states got back to business and their crime rates are plummeting. So you see all these, mostly red states, crime rates are plummeting. And Washington states might go down a little bit, but comparatively to the drops we're seeing in other states, it's very troubling. So a couple of the statistics that the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs pointed out in this recent data comparing 2024 to 2023, the national murder rate is down 3.55% over that period of time. Washington's murder rate up 42%. So they might say, oh, well, year over year, you know, first 6 months of 2025 for full years comparing 2023 to 2024, because of course we don't have a full year of data for 2025, our murder rate is up 42.46%, while the national murder rate is down 3.55%. That is startling. National violent crime rate down 6%. Washington violent crime rate up 8%. Aggravated assaults nationally up 2%. In Washington state, up nearly 20%. Vehicle thefts nationally up 16%. In Washington state, up 35%. And that would be even worse if we hadn't, in the second half of 2024, allowed police to pursue stolen vehicles again. Because our numbers started to improve after that. But they're even considering that last 6 months of the year, things were better. We're still in a significantly worse place than the national average. So Bob Ferguson has no business talking about we're trending in the right direction. No business talking about patting himself on the back for, you know, putting $100 million toward law enforcement, which hasn't resulted in one single additional new police hire and probably won't. And at the same time, in Seattle, which is gearing up to elect a mayor that will be even softer on crime than the current mayor, Bruce Harrell. Like, Bruce Harrell hasn't been good for crime and public safety. He does a lot of dip, and not a lot of action. But the woman who's likely to replace him, Katie Wilson, she's going to be much worse for crime. She's essentially a socialist. So I saw this article come across from King 5 News, and even King 5 News is reporting, you know the crime crisis is bad when King 5 News can't even ignore it. Their headline, Belltown shooting surfaces frustration among residents with crime wave. King 5 News is calling what's happening in Belltown a crime wave. There had been multiple instances of stabbing, attempted robbery. They said, according to the Seattle Police Department, overall crime in Belltown is up 32% this year, while shootings are up 42%. One of them was disturbing. There was this 24-year-old guy. He was shot in the hand because somebody tried to rob him. And then right after that, there was another guy stabbed in that area because he wouldn't give up his food. Somebody stabbed him because he wouldn't hand over his food. So we're seeing all sorts of insane crime happening in the Belltown neighborhood at a time when the city of Seattle is trying to elect, or probably poised to elect, someone who's going to be much softer on crime. Very concerning. And then you have, this seems to happen every week, where a grocery store is closing its doors because they keep getting stolen from. And they have such bad crime crises outside their door. They're spending a ton of money on security. And that is hurting what is a very, very narrow margin of profit. And I mean, remember we did the stories on the QFC up in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle that was locking up the ice cream? We did a few segments on this because I was like, oh my God, last thing I want when I go to the grocery store to get a pint of ice cream for a nighttime binge is to have to call someone over to open up the thing and say, hey, I want a pint of Ben & Jerry's. But things have been bad. There was news that another grocery store was closing. And I appreciate that Councilwoman Joy Hollingsworth, who represents the Capitol Hill area, I appreciate that she had a long post over the weekend that was pointing out some of the reasons that this is happening. She said when a community loses a grocery store, it doesn't just lose a place to buy food. It also loses a pharmacy people rely on, a community hub, a distribution point where food banks and meal programs pick up donations. She said, so why are stores closing? What's really happening? And she actually talks about these places have paper-thin margins. The cost of doing business in Seattle is very high, something she's acknowledging. And then she talks about the hidden cost of crime. She says stores rely on private security, cameras, secret shoppers to deter crime. In Seattle, some chains spend millions per year on theft prevention alone. Even blue lights in bathrooms to discourage drug use. All of that is part of the cost. She says it's not just theft, it's the price of preventing it that eats into already thin margins. Grocery stores keep their own data and don't usually report the attempted thefts or other disturbances at their stores. So we have members of the Seattle City Council who see this, who aren't fooled by, oh, thefts have gone down. Even Joy Hollingsworth knows that these places have just stopped reporting it. That's how you know it's gotten bad and people are so tired when they just stop reporting crime. Can you imagine 10 years ago? Something happening to you, a crime, a theft, a mugging, somebody breaking in your car windows, even in Seattle, and just saying, I'm not reporting it. Even 10 years ago, that would have been like, what do you mean you're not reporting it? It's gotten, but I mean, I had a incident where a guy basically had tried to get in my car when I was in it. He was kind of a homeless guy. It was very weird, but I called the police immediately, right? And police got there within a couple minutes. This is like probably 15 years ago when I first moved to the city. If that happened to me now, I'm like, I'm not calling the cops. It's going to take the cops like 6 hours to get here. That guy's going to be long gone. I'm not going to bother with it. So you have people like Governor Bob Ferguson who don't want to confront that reality. They don't actually want to fight crime, right? All they want is for public perception of crime to be down so that they can get reelected. They don't care at all whether crime is actually down. So they'll ignore some of those clear indicators of, well, more people are saying they aren't reporting thefts and all this stuff because he doesn't actually want to fight crime. He just wants you to believe that crime's not so bad. So he'll twist the numbers in any way he can, saying, oh, we're on the right trajectory. Even if homicides are up 46%, well, the rest of the nation is seeing a drop in homicides. And that's all because all he cares about are politics, not actually fighting crime. I'm going to have more on that coming up in the next segment. Unbelievable. First, I've encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. I mean, gosh, unless you're a business owner, especially if you're a business owner, actually, and you're trying to navigate this insane environment around crime and thefts and whatever it is, and you're worried that your next claim is going to be the last claim before your insurance company drops you, well, make sure you have a company like First Mark Insurance in your corner. They can help you navigate this complex world of insurance that we're living in, whether it's on the personal side or the business side. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. Take the First Mark Challenge. They'll talk to you about your current insurance, go over your insurance needs, and then they'll go out, shop their market of carriers, come back to you with their recommendations. It's that simple. It's totally free. You never pay First Mark anything for their services, and they really do have your back. I love when they're proactively checking in with me and Mike, seeing how everything is going, whether anything's changing in our life. They're out there every single year like clockwork, seeing if they can get us better rates and better insurance. So join me, join Nicole, join Undivided, and so many Undivided viewers and listeners who are now members of the First Mark family. Take the First Mark Challenge today. That's how it starts. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. So in continuing this conversation about crime, and I've said this before, I really believe in some of these blue states and blue cities. They would rather people die than have to work with Donald Trump, without a shadow of a doubt. Whether it's on sanctuary policies or fighting crime or the homeless crisis and the fentanyl crisis, they would rather people keep dying than have to work with Donald Trump or admit that Donald Trump has a couple good ideas. Let's talk about it in our segment. Unbelievable. Okay, so we're in day 12 of President Donald Trump's federal crackdown in Washington, D.C. And I said last week, we'll see if it works. You know, this is what we all want. This is what I want. And I've asked the city of Seattle to do for years is let's get in there and give them hell. Let's swarm the area. Let's get help from the feds. Let's go in. Let's take out drug dealers. Let's make sure we maintain a police presence for an extended period of time in some of these areas and these hot spots so they don't just keep coming back. Let's go clear homeless encampments, blah, blah, blah. And so what I said is, well, I guess we'll figure out whether that tough on crime, tough on criminal approach works, because Donald Trump is doing it in Washington, D.C., and so far, so good. This from Fox News. D.C. arrests surpass 1,000 as Trump-backed crackdown enters 12th homicide-free day. So there hasn't been a murder since Trump's crackdown began, 12 days. And in case you're like, well, how often is there usually a murder in Washington, D.C.? Well, so far in 2025, there's been 101 homicides. And so up to this point, they averaged about one murder every 2.2 days. And so compare that to 12 days. That's a pretty significant statistic. And it's because
6 lives.
Saves 6 lives, basically. And it's because, I mean, they're all over. And the DC police get to actually do their jobs. They're out there conducting police work. I'm sure they love that. On Sunday alone, there were 86 arrests. They seized 10 illegal guns. Since the crackdown began 12 days ago, there's been more than 1,000 arrests and 111 guns taken off the streets. Now, wouldn't Democrats celebrate that? They hate guns. No, they don't. They hate you having a gun. They don't hate criminals having guns, right? So it's working, right? And it's taken a pretty immense show of force. You know, how long the Trump administration is going to be able to keep this up, I'm not sure. But it's not just sort of the fighting crime element where they're out there arresting people, drug pushers, people with illegal guns, all this stuff. I mean, Trump he had this big long press conference today, and he's even talking about the little things, you know, the broken windows theory. And hey, we're going to get out there. We're going to clean up the potholes. We're going to clean up the roads. We're going to clean up the sidewalks. We're going to beautify the city. And that stuff does matter. It can't be the only thing. You know, the city of Seattle will string up pretty lights and put artwork along 3rd Avenue. You still have people taking a dump in front of it. I mean, it's lipstick on a pig. So beautifying the area can only do so much. That has to be done in concert with the decision to enforce the law and to have a visible deterrent in the form of police officers, and in the case of DC, federal agents as well. So, but you look at this, right, and it's insane to me that Democrats are still railing against it. Authoritarianism, and there was a protest in DC against fighting crime, essentially. It's like that joke about Donald Trump could cure cancer and people would be out protesting, I have a right to die from cancer, you know, hands off my body with your cancer treatment. It's really quite insane, especially considering the fact that you have so many cities in this nation that are incredibly short on law enforcement. Washington state has the lowest number of police officers per capita, as you know, of any state in the nation, and who have some pretty significant crime problems. And in a regular functioning world, if you had people who cared more about outcomes than politics and political allegiances and political party, you would have these blue state governors and mayors reaching out to the president saying, we could use some help too. You know, we want to lead the way. But if you want to give us some extra bodies, if you want to give us DEA, FBI, ATF, get out there, get the drugs off the street, you know, in large numbers, get the ATF and the illegal drugs off the street. In a sane world, you would have every city in America dealing with the crime crisis begging Donald Trump and the federal government for help. And instead, they're painting him as a Nazi for doing what he's doing in D.C. President Trump did allude to the fact that after they clean up D.C., he's got his eye on some other cities.
I have some slob like Pritzker criticizing us before we even go there. I made the statement that next should be Chicago, because as you all know, Chicago is a killing field right now. And they don't acknowledge it. And they say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense, and I'm a smart person. And when I see what's happening to our cities, and then you send in troops, instead of being praised, they're saying you're trying to take over the republic. These people are sick.
So, you know, him and his colorful language talking about Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. He also made some references to Gavin Newsom and other blue cities and states that he might want to have some sort of crime crackdown in. Now, for the record, I don't support that. I don't support a takeover all of what he's doing in D.C. He has special authority as the president, and given what D.C. is, to be able to do that there. I don't support the federal government coming into a city like Seattle, I know many of you might disagree, or a city like Chicago, and taking over policing responsibilities from the local police department in terms of him essentially being a de facto chief or a de facto mayor. I think that's a very slippery slope. I would, however, want them to welcome his help and welcome his support and work, oh my God, God forbid, together to fight crime. They should be begging him to do it, but they won't. So Governor Pritzker responded to the president's comments, talking a lot about his weight this morning, but also the possible federalization of Chicago. And he said the state of Illinois at this time has received no requests or outreach from the federal government asking if we need assistance. And we have made no requests for federal intervention, which again, I think is his right to do. If there's a governor, whether it's Bob Ferguson or J.B. Pritzker, and they're saying we don't want a federal takeover, I'm not going to fault them for that. Because the last thing I want is some Democratic president doing a takeover of a state for God knows what reason. Again, it's a slippery slope. But here's what bothers me. He won't even admit they have a problem. That's where he loses me entirely. So he goes on to say, the safety of the people of Illinois is always my top priority, which if that's your top priority, you're doing a really crappy job. Like, that's embarrassing to admit or to say that that's your top priority when clearly it's not working out so well. He says, there is no emergency that warrants the President of the United States federalizing the Illinois National Guard, deploying the National Guard from other states, or sending active duty military within our borders. Yes, there is. We can go back and forth about what actually it classifies an emergency. But Chicago has been first in the nation for murders for 13 years in a row. 573 people were killed in Chicago in just 2024 alone. Yet he says Donald Trump is attempting to manufacture a crisis? Manufacture a crisis? Sir, you have a crisis. He doesn't have to manufacture anything. Hundreds of people in a single city being slaughtered every year, many of them young black men who we're supposed to believe Democrats care an awful lot about. So I'm okay with the governor of Illinois or any governor not liking the idea of the federal government coming in and taking over. I believe in the separation between the state and the federal government. I believe in states' rights. If I were the governor of Washington, I wouldn't want some, president that I didn't like or a president that I did like coming over and taking responsibility from me and keeping a state safe. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't help an awful lot. But again, they'd rather let people die than admit that maybe they could use Donald Trump's help. What if it was a president of a different political party? What if it had been Joe Biden offering to send in some reinforcements and free up more FBI agents and DEA agents and ATF to do some special enforcements in a city like Seattle? They would have probably done it then. So it's really sad when you think about it, and they can paint him as an authoritarian or whatever it is, but they can't realistically deny that they do have a crisis, a crime crisis. So that's what bothers me about Pritzker. Say, yeah, like if he had just said, hey, we have a concerning homicide rate. Chicago has a concerning homicide problem and gang problem. And here are the steps we're going to take as a state to deal with it. Here are the steps Chicago is going to take as a city to deal with it. We don't need Donald Trump because here's what we're going to do. But they don't even offer any solutions to deal with the crime issue. They just say, we don't want Orange Man Bad's help. It's wild. And then, so he brings up Gavin Newsom as well. Here's how much they're willing to play politics with this. So Newsom's office sent out this post on X, which I'm not even sure the point that they're trying to make, in response to, California and LA having this big crime crisis. They said per capita, Memphis has 243% more violent crime than Los Angeles. Facts you won't see on Fox News. And in there, they have Los Angeles and a picture of the governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee. But they say per capita, Memphis has 243% more violent crime than Los Angeles. So why do they have a picture of the governor of Tennessee? Well, it's because They certainly can't have a picture of the mayor of Memphis, the city they're actually talking about, because the mayor of Memphis is this guy here, Paul Young, a Democrat. So here they are trying to make this dunk on what? Oh, LA isn't bad. Look at Memphis, with a picture of the Republican governor of Tennessee. Well, Memphis hasn't had a Republican mayor in decades. The last time they had a Republican mayor, it was like before I was even born. So Memphis has had Democratic leadership and is, on a per capita, the worst city in the nation when it comes to violent crime. Gavin Newsom's office thinks it's a dunk because I don't know if they just didn't Google and realize that the mayor of Memphis is a Democrat. But then they just sort of prove the point that Democrats and soft on crime has consequences. And it's had quite a few profound consequences in Memphis. And even with a Republican governor, that doesn't mean that governor can dictate the crime response in individual cities. And then, of course, we have Bob Ferguson. And this goes down the list. I said this last week. I mean, I'm at a press conference with Bob Ferguson, and he's talking about how they're going to push back against everything the Trump administration is trying to do on sanctuary policies. And I asked him a reasonable question about the fact that sanctuary policies in our state have killed people, including a Washington State Patrol trooper, and he cares so little about that, he won't even answer the question. Why not cooperate with the federal government and with ICE when it comes to known violent criminals who we could remove from our streets in the interest of public safety?
Yeah, appreciate it. I think I've answered that question. Any other questions that folks have?
Yeah, they don't care about fighting crime. Just that answer there negates anything Governor Ferguson ever says, suggesting he cares about the crime crisis or the trajectory of crime data or policing or anything like that. Because you won't even acknowledge you have a problem. You won't even acknowledge that, yes, sanctuary policies have shielded murderers and rapists and drug traffickers. And what do we always say? You can't fix a problem if you refuse to acknowledge that you have a problem or properly identify what the cause of the problem is. And to me, even if I was a Democrat, and I can say this because I used to be one, and I had someone like Bob Ferguson or Gavin Newsom or J.B. Pritzker, and they were blaming Donald Trump for everything under the sun, including people dying on our streets that has nothing to do with the president of the United States, I would get sick of it. I can't believe that more Democratic voters don't get sick of it too. It's really unreal. They'd rather say Orange Man bad than save lives. It's quite a shame. All right, coming up next in national, Australia, international today news. Australia is considering taxing residents for spare bedrooms. And if you think it can't happen here, think again. We'll discuss. First, speaking of housing and housing policy, make sure you sign up for the Engage conference coming up October 22nd and 23rd at Maidenbauer Center in Bellevue. I will be talking on a panel with my friend Jonathan Cho about how the media covers housing issues and things like rent control. I mean, if it hadn't been for the media watering down rent control never would have passed. So join us for that. It'll be a ton of fun. There's a lot of other things you can get into at the Engage conference, especially if you're a landlord in Washington State. It's a great conference to go to. It's hosted by our friends at the Rental Housing Association of Washington. So you can sign up for the conference there, rhawa.org, rhawa.org. And while you're there, learn more about the mission of RHA to help small to mid-sized landlords navigate this complex housing environment that we're in Washington State that makes it nearly impossible for landlords to be able to exist. It's really quite depressing. Okay, in some international news, oh my gosh, I saw this. The first thing I thought of is they're giving what the West Coast states ideas. Australia just giving West Coast states ideas. I give it a year, not even a year. I bet that they introduced this in the Washington State Legislature this coming legislative session. So in Australia, I'll play a little news clip in a moment. But basically, they have a housing market issue. There's a lot of demand, so very familiar with that here, certainly. And so they said, well, what should we do? Well, let's punish people who have homes where they have extra bedrooms that they're not actively using.
This match between the average size of households and the average size of a home is prompting experts to propose a tax on spare bedrooms. New research from Cotality revealed a third of Australian households is made up of just 2 people, while the most common property is 3 bedrooms. It's suggested that a levy, along with the removal of stamp duty, may encourage shrinking families and empty nesters to downsize, freeing up supply.
That's, talk about authoritarianism. That's it. But I can 100% see them doing that here. So their idea is that if you are like some empty nester or some, retiree and you don't need the extra bedrooms, I mean, never mind that, maybe you have them so when your kids come home and visit and your grandkids, they have a place to sleep. But they want to punish you for that. So you'll move out of your bigger home to free up supply and move into a smaller home that more adequately fits the number of bedrooms you need. They're going to do that in Washington State this year. I guarantee, mark the calendar. Brandi predicted on August 25th that they're going to propose some sort of tax on spare bedrooms. And they'll have someone come into your home and inspect your bedroom and whether anybody's sleeping in there, and it'll be totally crazy. But what are they going to do about mine? Because we technically have 2 spare bedrooms, but one of them's like where I put all my crap and there's no bed in there. So they can't count that one. It's like an office. The other one, that's Lucky's room. That is where my dog sleeps.
Well, no, I assume what they'll do is say, this many people are registered at this address. So 2 people at your address, 4 bedrooms, tax on 2 of the bedrooms.
It says, so the head of the research company looking into this, Eliza Owen, she said the government could make it more expensive to have more housing than you need and thus make it cheaper to live in smaller housing. More housing than you need. Australia lost its mind. You need to stop visiting Australia. Speaking of Nazis, the real Nazis over there, it's just wild. So mark my word, they're going to do that here. All right, here's a controversial one to come out of President Donald Trump's marathon briefing today. He was signing executive orders, including one on punishments if you burn the American flag.
Lastly, sir, this is an executive order on flag burning. It charges your attorney general.
Would you listen to this? This is very important. Flag burning. All over the country, they're burning flags. All over the world, they burn the American flag. And as you know, through a very sad court, I guess it was a 5-4 decision, they called it freedom of speech. But there's another reason, which is perhaps much more important. It's called death. Because what happens when you burn a flag is the area goes crazy. It incites riots at levels that we've never seen before. People go crazy. In a way, both ways. There are some that are going crazy for doing it. There are others that are angry about them doing it. What it does is incite to riot. I hope they used that language, by the way. Did they?
Yeah, incitement.
Incite to riot. And you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. You don't get 10 years, you don't get 1 month. You get 1 year in jail, and it goes on your record. And you will see flag burning stopping immediately.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you will, but the question is that even constitutional? It is widely considered to be freedom of speech to be able to burn an American flag. It's, of course, a crappy thing to do. And I especially hate it when I see these silver spoon kids on college campuses who've been given every opportunity in the world because they live in the greatest country on earth burning a flag. It's utterly annoying. I don't think it'll stand up in court, but I asked you guys in our daily subscribers show poll on Patreon, Locals, and Acts. I feel like Nicole and I are heading towards another fiery disagreement. I asked you guys if you agree with President Trump's flag burning executive order. I didn't ask you to weigh in on whether it was constitutional or not. Nicole, before I check in with subscribers, yay or nay?
Well,
nay.
Again, I think when it comes to inciting violence, so if you're doing it to incite violence, because some people do, when you see Antifa out there and they're burning the flag to rile up the crowd and incite violence, then yeah, that's part of the deal. You're adding it on to, I'm trying to incite violence here. But if you I don't know, if you accidentally burn a flag.
Accidentally? Oops. Torch that one.
I don't necessarily think that you should get a year in jail because, yeah, that's a bit much, and that's a cost to us taxpayers and blah, blah, all the things. But
under what circumstance is someone accidentally burning a flag?
How
are you spending your weekends?
Oops, that fell in the campfire. It was a little too close. I don't know.
Here, my thing is, and I'm very curious what you guys have to say about this. I get the incitement, and it sounds like that's how he's trying to tailor it. Is not the act of burning the flag, but if it is inciting violence, they're trying to tailor it around this sort of constitutional issue and what they will see as a likely challenge on it. But by the time people are burning flags, isn't it already? Isn't the riot already incited?
That's what I mean. I like it as an add-on. So you did all these things. You were, starting fires in the street. You were assaulting police officers, and you lit a flag on fire. Yeah. Add on a year.
Well, you almost brought up something there that maybe, you lit a fire in the streets.
That should be
a crime there. It doesn't matter what you light on fire, flag, whatever it is. Anyway, I say no to this just because it is a slippery slope. I make a living off the First Amendment. I don't want to see the First Amendment thwarted in any way. And I do think this is approved speech. Unfortunately, very split, as you can imagine, and split between our different platforms. On Patreon, people are saying 55% yes. Over on Locals, 60% no. So you guys are very split on this.
Ooh, I would have thought it was actually opposite on the platforms.
I don't think so, because Locals tends to be a little more conservative. And so I think they maybe a little more on the constitutional element. Okay. This one from our friend Jesse Simmons. He said, I agree with previous Supreme Court precedent that freedom of speech applies here. I personally do not like or approve of the action itself, but that's part of being an American. For context, I too am an Army veteran, like many who have commented on this poll. Yeah, we have a lot of veterans, and so thank you for that. Let's see what our buddy Steve has to say. There are few things I despise more than flag burning. That said, there's a lot of things I don't like that shouldn't be a federal crime. This is bad precedent. Let's see, Richard, if it's hate to burn any other flag, then it should be the same for the American flag. So that's a question. That's interesting, Richard, because I actually don't know the answer to that. If I, in the middle of Capitol Hill, burned a trans pride flag, is that a hate crime? No, if it's somebody else's flag, because that's the other thing is, are they bringing an American flag to destroy? Or are they taking down an American flag that is someone else's property? Because then that would be property destruction.
So it's probably a little complicated because you are an American. So even though a lot of them are Americans that are burning American flags, so how can it be a hate against yourself, right? So a lot of when you're saying I'm burning a trans flag, you're not trans and you're burning a trans flag.
Don't assume.
Well, in theory, that's what you're describing. But if you're an American burning American flag, I don't know. That's difficult.
That makes sense. But would it be though? That's my question that I'm not exactly sure. I think if I went up to Capitol Hill, which I would never do this, and went to one of their, gay bars and tore, because that would be property destruction, right? But if I brought up my own trans pride flag and burned it, I guarantee they'd come after me for something.
Burn ban.
Breaking the burn ban.
Burn ban.
Let's see. Tiffany, I voted no because when a flag becomes worn out, we respectfully perform a burning ceremony with honor. We give ours to the local Boy Scouts to perform it. It's important to know the difference between honorable and hateful burning, but I believe it is a First Amendment right. Han says, yes, I agree with the executive order. I've always been of the opinion that the American flag stands for our country, so burning it is like threatening to attack our country. It's not a speech issue. It's treason. If you're an American citizen doing it, and if not a citizen, it is terrorist behavior. Now, I do think it's often terrorist behavior.
I do.
Unfortunately, I just think that this is one of these things about America that, we ask our government to, we don't ask our government. Our government doesn't have a choice in the matter, where we can do a lot of things and say a lot of things, some that are offensive, some that, people might deem as anti-American.
We're
and that's
free
just
country,
the beautiful,
and that's part of it.
100%.
Free to burn stupid, free to be stupid. There you go.
Yeah. Patricia, my
not
thoughts.
The stupid flag. The flag is not stupid.
My
free
thoughts
to be stupid.
Are you pledge allegiance to the American flag and the freedom it represents. Burning the flag says you spit on the men and women who died to give you that freedom. We take our civil liberties way too far. Careful, Patricia. I saw people hanging a Palestinian flag over ours, and that says to me they pledge allegiance to Palestine, not America, and they need to go there. This has gotten way out of hand. Now, I do agree that it's like spitting on men and women who have sacrificed and died for our country, but I just think they have a right to do that. Very interesting.
I don't know how people do it. I literally cannot let a flag touch the floor or I feel sick to my stomach. Yes. I feel so guilty. I don't know how these people stand in the streets and burn flags.
No, they want
it's
attention.
So
They're just desperate for attention. It's really
so
quite
gross.
Ridiculous. All right, we'll get to comments from the live stream coming up next. First, there's a ton going on globally with the economy. You've got trade deals that are affecting global markets, the uncertainty of what's happening with AI, how that's going to impact the markets, and these new digital coins seemingly every day, which I'll never understand. They baffle me. I don't understand how that could be currency.
So I could make some money off
please
of them.
explain this whole thing to me. So with all that, are you concerned about how much risk your retirement portfolio is exposed to? Is it time just to get back to basics? Bulwark Capital always focuses on risk management, especially in this chaotic world. The core of that strategy involves basic fundamentals of value investing. Bulwark continues to look for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, and give your retirement as much upside as possible. Bulwark's Zach Abraham reviews market changes with his daily Know Your Risk podcast. So check that out. And you can also check him out on YouTube at Know Your Risk Podcast. So get back to basics with Zach and Bulwark Capital. Get a second opinion. Schedule your Know Your Risk review. Go to knowyourriskpodcast.com. That's knowyourriskpodcast.com. All right, let's see what you guys have to say in the comments today. Moon Goddess. Giving someone a second chance is like giving them an extra bullet for their gun because they missed you the first time. Expulsion means no return, talking about the student in Arlington. And I don't know, in the emails, like sometimes it's referred to as an expulsion and then a suspension because suspension is temporary, expulsion is permanent.
Typically,
so
yes.
What they gave him is a suspension.
But yeah, and I'm not sure if you could say he was expelled for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So you were expelled for the year and then brought back the next year, but I don't know.
Again, if they disagree with my legal assessment of it, the law is very clear. It grants very broad authority to superintendents to look at these things on a case-by-case basis, and that makes a lot of sense because there's so many different circumstances under which someone might or did bring a loaded gun to school. You know, is it like they had a backpack from a hunting trip or something versus they had a plan to shoot up a school? You know what I mean? And so how could you just say, oh, it's a de facto 1-year ban? You can't. You have to give superintendents some amount of latitude to be able to adjust on a case-by-case basis. The superintendent should use it here, and I think that that's what parents will demand of her tonight.
In the statement that you were given, they said there was a language manipulation or maybe a choice that I recognize where they said the school districts may not require a student to attend an alternative school. And so they're really playing with language, the way that you phrased it on the show and then said may not require. So they don't have to send them to an alternative school, which we never said they had to. No. We said they could choose to.
They could choose to if they
that would be a good choice in this circumstance.
I agree. And at the very least, let parents know. This would not have been such a big story had you let parents know. We probably still would have talked about it. But it's the keeping parents in the dark about their children at a public school that they pay for. There's something profoundly wrong about that. It's just, I don't understand why a school would want to keep them in the dark. Yeah. At ARC0606, this will likely make kids not willing to share such information as they could feel it's useless and won't do much, which is a scary thought. That's a good point. So for those kids who went to the principal and told on this kid with the gun, now they're the ones who are going to be feeling unsafe. I've already talked to one of their parents. They don't know what to do. They didn't do anything wrong. They did something right. But now it's almost like they're being punished for it, right?
Yeah.
Jeremy, Revolt on Facebook. Our community Facebook pages are blowing up this morning talking about the meeting tonight. We're making sure we have our ducks in a row.
I might need to go to it.
I love that. We might need to send Nicole. Correspondent Nicole's maybe on it. Parents. Incognito, yes. Nicole's got her. Just in there. Yeah, I like that. You could wear like I don't know, what's like opposite of something you would wear?
I might need to stop by the Arlington Hardware store anyway.
Oh, there it is. Yep, Nicole has an excuse to go to Arlington Hardware. That's all she wants to do. Big Princess with a $20 super chat, Ragecaster Support Fund. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Let's see. I don't know how to pronounce this. Risonokara. Disagreement with their actions is treated as death threat. That's why they can't show the receipts. It's all in their fees. Talking about the group that says, oh, you can't show the pictures that we took. Or don't take pictures of what we're doing in a public space in front of kids. How dare you do that?
The crowd couldn't see.
What do you mean the crowd?
Well, the camera wasn't on a beam and on the
I've never heard something so dumb. I've never heard something so dumb.
Something else.
It's like that, is it from Billy Madison? Is like, that was the speech that the guy gives, like, I award you no points and may God have mercy on your soul. We are all dumber for having listened to that.
Yeah.
Shine the light. That's right. Neither men nor women should be parading around in their lingerie. On Washington's crime spike, old comparatively to the rest of the nation. Old Sub Sailor, Comrade Ferguson is just executing the National Socialist Democrat plan to turn our nation into a socialist banana republic. They want to control every aspect of our lives. Yeah. Weiss Castle, Dems are freaking out over 5 Kroger stores closing. Kroger blames shoplifting, but Dems ignore it. Yeah, Kroger's like, hey, we're closing because of shoplifting. No, you're not, liars. It's like, no, we just told you why we're closing.
One of my neighbors works for Whole Foods, and he got out of the Whole Foods Capitol Hill store because it was so terrible to work in, and it was not fun going to work. And then now it's closing, and a bunch of them are getting out. But he said that no one ever did anything about the crime. They kept trying to survive, but their margins are so slim. And then, I mean, it was like a broken window. I mean, that's thousands of dollars for them, and no one was ever helping them, you know, try to curtail some of this crime and some of the homelessness. And then people come in the stores, and you're distracted. Like, it makes people not want to come in your store.
It's dangerous for employees.
And now you can just order Amazon Fresh or whatever. Right. So people are like, forget it. I don't want to go in these stores because of what's happening.
Yeah, I would never go back on that QFC on Cap Hill. It's shady in there. Jeffrey Susestic, these cities like Seattle need a federal takeover. If these cities wanted the crime to stop, they would put more effort into doing so. I agree. It's their soft on crime policies that led to this. This is what is needed to wake up our state's leaders to the problem they created. Yeah, I get into this like slippery slope. I think the president could come here and do some great things in Seattle, and we should welcome it, especially ahead of the World Cup. Like, LA and Seattle should be begging the president to come here and clean up the cities ahead of the World Cup, but they'll never do it. It's absolutely outrageous.
Takeover. It's a partnership. Think of it as a partnership.
It should be a partnership, yes, but he will take over if they don't allow it to be a partnership, which is what I'm concerned about. All right, we got a couple super chats. I'm going to read through them quick. Lil Miss J, Brandi and Nicole, we wanted to send you some support. We want to ensure your fur babies get more treats too. Well, thank you.
Trust me.
Half my money goes.
They get lots of treats.
Brandi, are you able to do a follow-up interview with the police officer families that were affected by defund the police movement and horrific crimes that have happened? Yeah, I did this great interview with, I think it was before I left TV, with the wives of Seattle police officers who'd left the department. And it was just like, to hear their perspective on everything was really, really interesting. Let's see. Rachel Cisneros, I can't believe Lucky doesn't sleep with you, Brandi. I've got 2 Dobermans to spoon with. Oh, no, she does.
Oh, she does.
But during the day, if you go up there, she's in the middle of the guest room bed, because there's a window where she can look out and see her best friend's house, which is the 2 neighbor kids. Yeah. So she'll like see if they're moving over there. Like, are you coming over? Are you coming over? So she likes that. She likes that bedroom. And I'll be damned if the government is going to tax me for it as an empty bedroom. All right. Let's see. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah. Shall we get to our closing sanity check? Let's do it. I don't even really know what it is. This is a Nicole choice, so if it sucks, it's Nicole's fault. Wow. Elizabeth Warren, in her Won't Back Down F Around and Flip the House tour, that's literally what the tour is called. Yeah. It was in Omaha. Won't Back Down tour, F Around and Flip the House, but with the whole word. They're trying to be so cool, and it's like, Trump, it works with Trump because that's who he is authentically. And then you see the Democrats like, let's be more edgy. And it just isn't cool coming from them. But she was asked about Dems, their approval rating being at an all-time low. And her big idea is to just keep doing what they're doing.
The Democratic Party's approval rating is also near an all-time low. So the question is, what do Democrats need to do to win back Congress in the midterms and just win back the people?
Well, I got to tell you, nobody elected the Democrats to lie down and play dead. The number one thing we got to do is stand up and fight back.
Wow, profound. Okay, got it. That sounds like a great strategy. Keep it up. That has been our closing sanity check. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. A reminder, starting Thursday, we're on a little bit of a vacation. I'm taking my mother to Europe. First time we've ever gone. So, but we have a full schedule. I just don't want you guys to be here Thursday at noon waiting for a live show that isn't going to happen. But we have a full schedule of Truth Tellers, our special series we're really excited about. But I'm getting ahead of myself because we're still going to be here tomorrow and the next day. If you haven't signed up to support our show already, please do so. undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. And you just click on the banner that says support the show for $5. You do it, and then you feel really warm and fuzzy inside for supporting independent news. See you tomorrow.